Good evening and salutations, my GH fans. A weasel is always going to be a weasel. No matter how hard they try from being anything else, they're always going to refer back to their original nature. And what am I talking about? Brad, of course. See, Brad decided he storms in Portia's office and he's like, I'm gonna blackmail you. I'm gonna sit there and tell them who poisoned Drew. And Portia's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not the one that got that kind of money. You did. And ultimately, what it comes down to is she's like, okay, you tell your version, I tell my version, you're next con. Who do you think they're going to believe? And she was like, listen, at the short time of me working with you, I got to know how your mind works. So I already knew that you were going to sit there and do that. So now, you don't get a raise, you don't get a bonus, you don't get a promotion. You pretty much kind of got your ass handed to you and pretty much told you to kick rocks without socks. And I personally thought that that was hilarious. So that happens. Now, um, Marco came to pick up some paperwork from a client, runs into Lucas. They wound up having little, I don't know, office, like brunch date or whatever. And, they're just talking about how they're excited to sit there and see each other again and everything. And they're in the office. I guess they're in the break room or whatever. And Brad is about to go in there. He sees Marco with Lucas. And he gets angry and hurt and jealous and everything. So at some point, he runs into Drew. Now, Drew was sitting there talking to Mac about him being poisoned. Mac was like, okay, how about I just sit there and look this, the security footage and see who did what? He was like, no. Eventually, the man will come back to me and, justice will be served. And I'm kind of just like, whoa. Why don't you just let him look through the security footage? What is the problem? You're not hiding anything or anything like that. You went to Tracy. You went to go talk to Tracy and everything like that. Why don't you just do it? Like, honestly, tell you the truth, it felt more plot driven than anything else. Because if they would have looked through the footage, they could have clearly saw who did it. That would be common sense. He wasn't hiding anything. So he had no reason to sit there and tell Mac to not have them look through the security footage. But of course, plot over common sense wins every single time. So he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And at some point, I guess he goes back to get his fluids revived or whatever. He starts remembering a couple of things. He remembers the conversation with Tracy and being at the I can't remember that new restaurant that they're at, but he remembers that part. And then he thinks back even before. And the last place he also remembered was being with Portia. This eventually is going to come out, right? And Brad walks in there, and Drew's like, I want nothing to do with you. And that's when Brad pretty much is like, I know who poisoned you, but, it comes with a cost. Now, you can tell. He can sit there and tell Drew everything. But he can also kiss that job goodbye. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, he can still pull off that bluff. He can be like, hey, listen, she ordered me to sit there and do all this stuff on the ketamine and everything like that. Tell about the lab results or whatever. And at the very least, those allegations is not going to look good on Portia. So he can essentially still burn down her life, you know? Um, Lulu. Lulu and Dante, they wind up having an argument. And there's a point where she's about to sit there and tell Dante about Brooklyn, but she decides not to, and she's all like, oh, you always take her word over mine, and everything that she says is gospel, and da 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 da. And they're going back and forth, back and forth. Carly comes in, and Dante leaves, right? Then she's about to go off. She's like, oh, I'm going to sit there and tell Dante everything. And I'm like, well, actually, tell you the truth, Carly's like, no, what are you doing? And Carly tells Lulu the same thing Brooklyn said, the same thing Laura said in a sense, but pretty much what Brooklyn said. One, it's not your place. It's not your place. And two, this kid could be living a happy life, and you telling him that can blow his whole life up. And it's also important because, Carly, the thing is, Carly is like, listen, Robin did that to me and it blew up our lives and everything like that. And, it wasn't her place. And of course, Lulu's like, AJ had a right to know. And again, she's like, Robin, you know, it wasn't her place. And it's not your place either. Just because Dante may have the right to know, it's not your place to sit there and say anything. So Lulu brings up, well, what if it was Jason? Would you not sit there and tell Jason? And she's like, fair point. But then I sit there and I remember back when she did exactly that. When she told Sonny about Christina, I think that's what wound up happening. I'm not too sure, but I think that's what wound up happening. And she had that same confliction. She was married to him or dating him or whatever, and she knew about Alexa's secret. She kept going back and forth. So I guess on some level, she should be a little bit more understanding. Yes, her message is still right in the end, but she should have a little bit more understanding about being in that position, seeing how only a couple of years ago, maybe 10 years or so, she was in that position. Um, so Emma, checks her pockets, whatever, realizes that this drive is not in there. She starts freaking out. And Jocelyn acts like she discovered it was in the sand, right? Gives it to Emma. Emma hugs her and everything. There's a point where she is sitting there talking to Vaughn. One of the things that Vaughn asks her is like, do you miss your old life? Because here's the thing, Vaughn is still testing her. He is still testing her. I think he will always test her. At some point, I guess she goes back and she's playing volleyball with Emma and everything. And after that, they're bonding and they're talking and stuff and just kind of reminiscing or whatever, right? And everything is all good so far. Until there's a point when Jocelyn's like, just let you know, if you don't get this research, partnership or whatever, it's not the end of the world. You're going to be fine. And I'm just like, why would you even bring that up? Now, of course, the reason why she brings that up is because she's found guilty. And Vaughn is right there. Because that's the thing. You can't sit there and be feeling guilty about doing what you're doing. You got to sit there and just kind of just shut that down. And you can see the disappointed look on his face. Now, I'm going to be honest. I like Vaughn so far. If they want to go out together, that's cool. Because the thing is, with Vaughn holds her feet to the fire. Vaughn, unlike Dex, will not just sit there and just let her get away with stuff. And that's why I kind of rock with Vaughn in a lot of ways. Because she needs somebody like him. She really does. So Tracy pretty much just asks Lois, where's my grandchild? I was like, don't you mean our grandchild? But okay. And, she's like, I know and everything like that. They go back and forth. And, of course, Tracy's upset with Lois, for one, lying to her face for years. Two, not having Ned know. And it gets so bad that she accuses her of sitting there saying, was it Brooklyn's idea of getting rid of the baby or was it your idea? Then there's a couple of points where Tracy's like, not Tracy, Lois is like, I did it because Brooklyn asked me to and I want to support my daughter. But growing up here, I think she said something along the lines of like it was an extra bonus that the child didn't grow up here or something like that. Now, of course, Tracy, the thing is, there's a point where Lois is like, so what was you gonna do? You was gonna sit there and just lock Brooklyn in her room and then just wait it out until she, force her to sit there and just kind of bond with the child or whatever. But she does say something very similar. She was like, he could have grown up here. He could have grown up here, and then when she was ready, she could have, claimed him or whatever. And I think that's when Lois is like, I'm so glad that I didn't do that. So I'm like, if Tracy didn't have a reason for hating you before, oh, she is going to hate you way more now. Um, Danny finds Geo and tells him about Rocco. And there's a couple times he wakes up, he passes out, he wakes up, he passes out, or whatever. They get him back to the boathouse. At some point, Cody comes in. Cody's like, oh, he's just sitting there thinking, he needs to kind of just sleep it off a little bit. But there's a point where after he puts a blanket on him, he realizes that his breathing, the rhythm is just very off. And I guess maybe that came from the fact that he was a lifeguard at one point, I'm assuming, because, he did do can counseling. There are lifeguards or whatever, and maybe he was one. The point is, he's like, we got to get him to GH. So you take him to GH, and the doctor's like, most likely he has, alcohol poisoning. So you got to pump his stomach and everything like that. They want to call in Dante. Well, Cody wants to call in Dante, getting Lulu there, and Gio's there. So now Gio has to sit there and answer all these different questions and essentially not rat out Danny. And you can see Dante be like, if something happens to my kid, this is going to be your fault. I don't know. I look at that, I'm like, well, it's not necessarily his fault. And then you could sit there and say it might be Danny's fault, but it's not like he actually sat there and put a gun to Rocco. And ultimately, what it just comes down to is kids being kids, right? And I have a feeling the way that Dante will be talking to Gio, there's going to be some people that's going to be upset about that. And I feel like there's going to be these conflicting sides, right? Because on one hand, people are going to be like, yo, you're out of pocket. You don't even know what's going on. On the other hand, there's going to be people that's watching it that's a parent. And they're going to be like, as a parent, you're not necessarily going to be thinking straight and rational in that situation. You're just going to start lashing out. I understand what that's like. Now, see, I'm not a parent, so I don't know that side. So I will probably be on the other side of the whole thing. But then the last part is Willow and Carly. So Carly was with Nina. I guess she went to go visit the kids or whatever. And Willow comes in. Willow's like, yo, it's been a long day. I don't feel like sitting there dealing with your mess. And also, she's like, long story short, don't just pop on. Don't just pop over here. Carly's like, well, I'm their grandmother. Okay, well, that's their mother. So next time before you just decide to pop over here, you call. You don't just show up whenever the hell you feel like it. They go back and forth a little bit. Carly leaves. And you know what? Here's my thing about Willow. I am loving this new Willow in a sense. Yes, she's doing some idiotic things, blah, 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 blah. I know, I can see it. But she's also having a backbone. And that's something that I am really loving right now because, honestly, to tell you the truth, people sit there and act like Carly is just this force of nature that everyone should just sit there and essentially bow down to and just whatever. And Willow's like, no, F you. And I can respect that for so many different reasons. So I'm here for it. Carly leaves, and of course, this is where Willow's like, oh, should I believe in Drew? Is he wrong? Is he right? What do you think? And I'm kind of just like, girl, you are too old in a sense to be sent there. I was like, first of all, when you got to sit there and come to Nina for anything, you know that you're just effed up at this point because Nina is just a dingbat. Let's just be real for a hot minute. But again, Nina is doing the whole manipulating thing. Oh, he cheated on you. I know. I saw the footage. just really kind of steering the conversation in a way where it's like she wants to make sure that Willow doubts Drew, right? And the truth of the matter is, yeah. Now there's a point where Nina does say something along the lines of, would a decent man try to get with a woman who is married? The answer is obviously no. So I'm not going to sit there and try to make it seem like everything that Nina said was wrong, but at the same time, it's like she's trying to stay on this high horse, and you're manipulating your own daughter. You're lying to your own daughter, and ultimately, she's going to find out that when they were together a little bit, well, you're with Drew as well. Like, seriously, think about how messed up that was. And of course, when she does sit there and tell the truth or whatever, what is she going to sit there and say, oh, well, I was only getting with him so this way he would lose interest in you? What? Like, I have to tell you the truth, I said that and that just sounds disgusting. I can't imagine how that is just, like, what? The thing is, Johnson did sit there and say, like, yeah, I was able to get the flash drive back to her, kind of in a sloppy way, not in the way I wanted it to, but I did. But let's be honest, when it's time to sit there and get that information and everything like that to Dalton and the disk or the file, whatever is corrupted, and Jocelyn hands in the homework and actually gets like a really good grade, she's gonna be like, nah, there's something kind of off about that. And then she's gonna sit there and think about the night where she had to drive, it messed up, and now it came back from Jocelyn, and Jocelyn is also going to get like a really good score and be the assistant. Like, just something that's just off. She's going to figure it out. That's the thing. And then also the thing with Willow is Willow actually kind of put it together a little bit like somebody drugged Drew, in a way to like manipulate the situation. And I'm looking at Nina, I'm like, Nina, here's the thing. I get that Willow is doing some kind of very questionable things, but Willow isn't an idiot. The fact that she figured it out that fast and she was that worried just showed that your time is fast approaching for you to be exposed. That's the look that's on her face. Also, there's a brief conversation between Dante and Lois, and long story short, Lois is there kind of giving Dante some advice as far as trying to fix things between Brooklyn and Lulu. Basically, they're saying that, sometimes strong women don't get along with other strong women. And she's not entirely wrong. I mean, come on, ladies. You know that you probably have a friend and another friend that don't necessarily get along because they both are super opinionated. They both love to sit there and think that they're right or whatever. So she's not entirely wrong. Now, with that being said, I think that's pretty much about it. I might have missed some stuff here or there, but that's the general gist of the video. If I missed anything, write it in the comment section below. Come to the live stream tonight, and we'll talk about it there.